All right, so Kevin Feige, the chief of Marvel Studios, gave a pretty extensive interview to journalists recently, and one of the things that struck me about these interviews that he gave, or this long interview, one section was about Blade, the new Blade movie, which was supposed to come out in November of 2025. It was announced, I believe, like 6 years ago. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but quite a while ago. And it's going to star Mahershala Ali, and it's one of those movies that's just been on hold forever. We got that preview with Blade in the Eternals in one of the post credit scenes, but ever since then, it's just been kind of DOA. Anyways, one of the reasons that Kevin Feige gives for this is the overexpansion of the MCU. Now, when Disney Plus was launched by Disney, they had a mandate to create these TV shows as well as the movies that they were producing, and link everything together. Now, I agree with Feige here that this was too much. I think that trying to link all these shows with all these movies creates the unintended consequence of, I guess, FOMO to some degree, but also people haven't seen all the shows, and so they don't know what's going on in the movies, and so they sort of think, oh, well, I missed that. I'm not caught up. I'm not going to go watch that. And that obviously is not a good thing for Marvel or for this interconnected storytelling, which worked pretty well when it was just movies, but now, when it's also shows, that's much, much more difficult because not everybody's going to watch all these shows. I think a bigger problem, though, just in terms of this overexpansion, is that a lot of the stuff they started making just wasn't very good. This is something, of course, he's not going to admit, but the fact of the matter is that the dip in quality corresponded with the rise in quantity. Now, I don't think necessarily that they have too much content. I don't think that necessarily the problem is too many shows or too many movies, because if they were all, stuff that people wanted to watch, I think people would still be going. This is the other part of this equation that he doesn't really touch on so much. Obviously, there's a problem with this, with interconnecting everything and people missing out on this show, so they don't go see this movie. Like the Thundercats is an example he uses, or Thunderbolts, not Thundercats. That's a cartoon from the '80s. It's a great cartoon. When are they going to make a live action Thundercats? Huh? No, but Thunderbolts. People hadn't seen a lot of the stuff that these characters were in on Disney Plus, and so they weren't that familiar with what this movie was about. They didn't go. That's a problem, right? But also there's the problem, like, Thunderbolts wasn't the worst Disney movie or Disney Marvel movie to come out since Endgame, right? It was better than a lot of them. But it fell into a lot of the same traps that a lot of these Marvel movies fall into, which is that it just has I'd say the primary one is that it had a very disappointing third act. And a lot of these movies are kind of letdowns when you get to the end of them. I'm kind of getting off track here. I want to talk about Blade, but I just wanted to touch on this stuff first, because I think that one of the problems that we've had with the MCU is that they keep making movies and shows about characters that we don't really care about. And they keep on, and I think in this attempt, especially to create a more diverse MCU, they've kind of fumbled. And that's not because I don't think that we shouldn't have a more diverse MCU. See, a lot of people, a lot of YouTubers are very anti-woke, right? That there's this whole culture war now that we can describe as woke versus anti-woke. I am not against the ideas behind having a more diversified MCU or just more diverse entertainment in general. I think that's a noble cause, generally speaking. I think the problem is execution largely. For instance, I would say that, you already had quite a bit of diversity, quite a lot of female characters, quite a lot of characters of color in the pre-Endgame MCU. It was already diverse, and I think continuing down that path wouldn't have been a bad idea at all. I think the problem is that you start to, when you start to focus on that as your end game. See what I did there? When you start to focus on diversity as the point, rather than as just a happy, not coincidence, but, just as part of the overall project, when it becomes the point, then you start getting shows like She-Hulk. You start getting shows where it's very obvious that they are trying to push a message. And trying to push an agenda and trying to foist these political ideas on viewers instead of just telling good stories with, diverse characters. I think you can point at Blade as a great example. This is a black superhero, right? And he was very popular in the 90s with Wesley Snipes in the role of this half vampire, daywalker, or vampire slayer. People didn't have a problem with Blade being black in 1998 when the first Blade movie came out. And yet somehow, nearly 3 decades later, we're still having this conversation as though people are really upset about having black characters. I don't think that's true of the vast majority of people who are upset with the direction that Marvel has gone. I mean, Black Panther was a huge hit, and I think most people agree that was a really well-made movie. I think the problem is you start getting into these shows where it seems that the point is not to tell a great story anymore, but rather to have a diverse cast. That's not fair to fans, that's not fair to shareholders, and it's not fair to minorities or women who are given these subpar shows and movies because they are part of an agenda rather than, getting to be part of a great movie. So I think everyone gets screwed over in this, but quality has been the problem, not too much quantity. Too much quantity of low par or low value quality has been the problem. And connecting everything. I do think that it makes a lot more sense to have shows that are not connected to the broader universe. And I'm not saying not completely connected, like you could have character crossovers, but you shouldn't have to watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier to understand the new Captain America movie, right? You just shouldn't have to do that. So now, speaking of Blade, though, now we finally got here. That was part of his reason. But then there's this quote that I tweeted about this, and the tweet got a lot of attention for me. I don't tweet a lot, so when I get a tweet that gets a lot of attention, I'm like, oh, people must be interested in this. Maybe I should make a video about it. But the quote from Mr. Feige is, "We didn't want to simply just put a leather outfit on him and have him start killing vampires. It had to be unique." That's the short version of this quote, and we'll just stop there for a second. Now, what struck me about this, and Variety, where this is from, they knew how this would resonate with people because they used it in the headline, but or not the headline, but it was in the headline. That's exactly what you should do with the Blade movie, right? Like that is fundamentally a exactly what fans want. Leather outfit, a badass sword, a pair of dark sunglasses, and some vampire killing. Now, people who criticized my little tweet were like, "Yeah, but if it didn't have a good script," well, yeah, obviously you also need a good script. And Kevin Feige also talks about this is his other bit of the quote. It fell into the time when we started pulling back and saying only accept insanely great, and it wasn't insanely great at the time. We didn't feel like, as we often do, you can have a good script and make it a great script through production. We didn't feel confident that we could do that on Blade, and we didn't want to do that to Marshall. I can't pronounce his name right now, and didn't want to do that to us. So there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, the notion that you can take a good script and turn it into a great script through production is insane. That's insane to me. Obviously, if you have a script, you have a draft of a script that you're going to turn into a movie, that script's going to change. It's not set in stone. There are going to be changes to the script. Okay. But if you have a good script, you're probably not going to change it into a great script during production. And I think that if that's the attitude that Marvel is going into movie making with, that might explain some of the problems we've seen in a lot of these movies with these not great scripts. I mean, when was the last really great script in a Marvel movie that you can think of? I'm hard-pressed to think of one. I think if you want a great script, you should have a great script to begin with and then make it even better in production. Not a good script, not an okay script, but a great one. That should be the basis for your movie. And it's crazy to me because the script is like the cheapest part of a movie, right? Even if you're paying someone a lot of money for like the movie rights or whatever, that's still usually a pretty cheap part of the movie. You pay a screenwriter to write a script for you. That costs so much less than the actors, the CGI, the whole filming, the marketing, all that stuff is, ends up being hundreds of millions. The script itself is like, I'm not saying it's easy to write a great script. I'm just saying it's very cheap. And that is obviously where the focus has been lacking in Hollywood in general. And it's just baffling. I don't know if it's just a dearth of talent, or again, if it's this focus on this agenda rather than on just telling a great story, or what it is. But obviously you shouldn't start with a good script and just hope and pray to the gods of comic books that it will turn into a great one during production. It's baffling to me. But really, I think this all kind of, we can look at this just very brief quote, right, and see kind of the mentality that Feige and the teams at Marvel have right now, Marvel Studios have right now, Disney. I mean, that sort of feels like probably what went on with Star Wars too. They're like, hey, we've got Star Wars and we've got a good script. It'll turn into a great script, and then we'll figure out the second and third sequel movie after Force Awakens. It'll all come together. Don't worry. Yeah. So no, on one hand, I'm glad that they're saying no. We don't want to just put out a Blade movie with a shitty script. On the other hand, is that really what the delay is about? That their script isn't good enough? That because I know there's been some iterations of it, and different directors have dropped out and everything. Is the problem that the script isn't a great enough story, or is the problem that they haven't figured out how to make it gimmicky, or how to include, again, a message in line with all these other movies and this agenda driven writing? Because it seems to me fundamentally that Marvel just doesn't know, or Feige doesn't know, what fans of these movies actually want. Because deep down, fans want a Blade movie about a vampire slayer killing vampires, right? And now a lot of people will say, oh, we just want Wesley Snipes. We don't want anybody else. And that's fine. I get it. Wesley Snipes was great as Blade. And, you had that line in the new Deadpool Wolverine movie where he's like, there will only be one Blade, right? Okay. But Mahershala Ali, I'm never going to say his name right in this video. I'm sorry. He's a great actor, and I think he could do a fantastic job as Blade. And I've been saying this, I'll make another video about Henry Cavill and David Corenswet as the two different Supermans we've had recently. You can't expect in the superhero genre for one actor to keep playing the role forever. You just can't. And yeah, Cavill got screwed over. I get it. I'll talk about that separately. I don't want to get into that here. But again, I'm okay with the new Superman. I didn't like the movie, but I thought the actor they got was perfectly fine. He was great. But same with Blade. I mean, Wesley Snipes is old now. I mean, I'd watch another Wesley Snipes Blade movie. Of course I would. But I'm also okay with them recasting the role to a younger actor who's a talented actor. But I do want them to just, like, let's just have another Blade movie where he's kicking ass and killing vampires, looking cool doing it with some good one-liners, and make it dark and have all the benefits of modern technology and CGI. I mean, really, if you go back and watch those old Blade movies, like, I mean, it's not like they're the greatest scripts, and certainly not the greatest special effects, but they're fun. And that's something that I feel like's really been lost in modern superhero movies, is fun, or, on top of other things like not caring. Like, first of all, the stakes are always ludicrous, and so we don't care about that. The characters we don't care about too much. But when it comes to something like Blade, we really do just want to have a violent action movie with vampire slaying, and it's kind of like John Wick, right? I mean, it's that kind of movie. We don't need it to be super deep. We don't need it to give us a message about racism, or we don't need any other characters to overshadow our hero Blade. That seems like a huge risk these days, is that they're like, how can we add a boss girl to this movie who saves him from the vampires? We need to have someone save Blade and take the spotlight. And that, it sounds crazy, but that's just what we've seen happen over and over and over again. I mean, they made a whole show about Obi-Wan Kenobi where he was completely overshadowed the entire time by the rest of the cast, including a small girl. He was like this bumbling idiot. Like, this is, if any actual fan of Obi-Wan Kenobi were to make a show about Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'm not saying it would be good necessarily, but one thing I can guarantee is it wouldn't overshadow Obi-Wan Kenobi with other characters. He would be the protagonist. He would be the hero. He would, no, I'm not saying that a hero can't have help. I'm not saying that you can't have someone get him out of a tight spot here or there. There's obviously lots of opportunities for other characters to play a role in these movies. But it just feels like what they're actually waiting to achieve here with Blade is to make it less like Blade. To come up with a script where they can subvert our expectations of Blade and have someone else be the hero or share the spotlight or give us some deeper thing or make it a genre type movie rather than just a straight up. I mean, they even talk at one point about having like this idea to make it like set in an earlier time period or whatever, and that could be cool. But I don't think every movie has to be kind of like a genre movie within the comic book genre. You can just say, hey, we're gonna have Blade be set in a modern day time, and he's killing vampires, blah 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 blah. There's a lot more to talk about with this whole Feige interview. There's a bunch of things. He talks about having lower budgets on upcoming films. And I think it's probably smart because these budgets have ballooned so much and then the returns have diminished. You can't keep doing that. And again, I don't think that the draw for superhero movies is just the big special effects stuff. I think if you tell a good story, you can get away with a lot less when it comes to all the action set pieces and special effects. I think you just can. As long as it doesn't look bad. I mean, look at Godzilla Minus One. I mean, that was a really cheap movie to make. I don't remember the exact budget, but compared to, it was like 15 million or something. Like, it's amazing what you can do with less as long as you have a good story. And I just wish that was the lesson that Marvel and Lucasfilm and all these companies, I wish that was the lesson that they were taking away from all of this. That they shouldn't sacrifice a good story to push a political agenda. They shouldn't sacrifice a good story because they have to spend all their money on CGI. They shouldn't sacrifice a good story for any of these reasons, or because they think, at this point we should be well past the idea that, it's just a comic book movie, right? Fans will just go because they're dorks. I mean, to some degree, yeah, sure. People are eating up the new Superman movie, and it's not very good. So on some level, people will just go and they will just enjoy subpar crap if it's pretty enough. But I still think, maybe I'm too idealistic, but I still think, a good story is what sells most games and movies and shows. And that's where, more than anything else, Marvel has been lacking. And in the case of Blade, a good story just means, give the character some conflict, let him kick some ass, keep us invested in the outcome. We know he's going to win, but like, I don't know, give that's where you add in the other characters. Will he protect or save or this or that person? That's where you create the tension, and then you just have him, doing what he does. So that's all I wanted to say about that. I may make another video about Superman. I do have more thoughts on that, and I did have my review, which I've already posted, but I do kind of want to follow up on that with some other thoughts. And I'm actually rewatching Man of Steel because it's been so long since I've seen that, and I kind of want to talk about those two. And I just finished The Shield for the first time. I'm so late to watching The Shield, but I want to make a video about that because that was an incredible show, and I just want to talk about what made it so incredible and how we just have so few shows like that, or like The Wire, which I also watched for the first time recently. We have some great TV shows these days, but so few like that, and what made that great. So I've got a lot of stuff I want to make videos about, and I will do so. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and peace.